What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Crossover Podcast here on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. If this is your first show, thank you for joining. This is the show where we go behind enemy lines to get some intel on the 49ers opponent of the week. This week, of course, week 3, we know it's the Rams. And for that, I go to my favorite Rams content creator, Jake Ellenbogen, here with us. Jake, thank you so much for stopping by.
Rob, you're the man. I swear to God. I mean, I was just saying it on my live stream. You're great. There's so many great people in your space. And that meant a lot to hear that. So I appreciate that. Even if I kind of assumed that you thought that, I appreciate it nonetheless.
Okay, so now that we have broken our arms, patting each other on the back, I hope your team loses and dies like a dog. I don't care how injured you are. It's fine, because guess what? Now, as we sit here on Thursday night recording this, the 49ers are just as injured. Well, not just as injured, but very much injured also.
It became a very interesting game over the course of 24 hours. That's what I'll say. And I'm still, I don't want to kill the suspense. I still think the 49ers are going to win this game. I do. But I think now there's a legitimate pathway for the Rams to pull off this upset. And it starts off, first off, you have Stafford, and the 49ers have Brock Purdy. So while these teams are banged up, there aren't really excuses to be made for those guys, and those guys don't want excuses, if we're being honest. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay aren't going to make excuses either. Just go out there and take care of business. But when it comes to the Rams, make no mistake about it, the 49ers are giving up 107 yards per game on the ground. Rams have to run the football. They have to find a way to do it. They have not been able to run it with Kyren Williams, who was the best running back outside of Christian McCaffrey last year. And they just have not been able to find any sort of rhythm for him. They got Blake Corum going a little bit in garbage time last week. So I wonder if we see more of him. And maybe that kind of helps, I don't know, maybe just jolt Kyren a little bit. But I also think in this game, there are two things that are really important. First off, the receiving game, now other guys have to step up. And the Rams have the best wide receiver coach in football in Eric Yarber. He just turns water into wine, does it, routinely. And it's why Demarcus Robinson was actually like a contributor at the end of the year, like a key contributor. He's the number one receiver coming into this Sunday. Now, for the casual fan out there, they probably don't even know who that is. But, if you've been paying attention for the Rams, then Tutu Atwell had 7 catches, 77 yards on 9 targets last year, week 2 against the 49ers at SoFi. I think he's going to be utilized a lot more than he was with 10. It was only 10 snaps he had in the past game. And then in addition to that, Jordan Whittington, look out for 88. I'm telling you, you got 88 problems. You just don't realize it yet. Okay. Jordan Whittington is going to be a problem this weekend. His ability after the catch, this is a guy, and Jesse can attest to me on this. Okay. I said straight up on our show, I said, look, Jordan Whittington, before he became a Ram, so no bias here. Jordan Whittington, and I'm not a Texas fan. You see the Jayhawk behind me. Jordan Whittington, during the mock draft period of the offseason, I had him going to the Rams, and I said, this is the one guy in the draft. If anyone's going to be the next Puka Nacua, it's Jordan Whittington. They end up drafting him. Now he's got a shot in week 3 to do what Puka Nacua did last year when Cooper Kupp was injured. So, look, Rob, to make a long story short, although it's pretty long, I would just say this right now. The Rams started to close the gap a little bit last year against the 49ers. I was really impressed with that game in week 2. We didn't really get to see a later on matchup that was fair. It was a bunch of backups, whatever. Fun game. As a Rams fan, it was a lot of fun, but we didn't really get to see much. This game, we're still not getting to see a ton, but we have 2 starting quarterbacks in there. The starters are trying to play instead of, just backups. And I think the number one thing that I'm the most excited about by far in this game is seeing how good Jared Verse truly is when he goes up against the best left tackle in football. Because I'll tell you right now, Jared Verse has looked really damn good in those 2 games. This is the test. And if he does well against Trent Williams, it's not only going to help them right now in the short term and in the immediate, it's going to help them long term, because it tells them right now they got a guy at 19 who maybe should have gone in the top 10.
I don't want to burst your bubble. I will tell you that Trent Williams has not looked like Trent Williams through 2 games. He's still played really well. The bar is incredibly high for him, but he gave up 4 pressures last week and a couple of sacks. So not exactly the same Trent Williams that we've always known and loved. He didn't have a preseason because of all the contract stuff. He's older now. So I'm not quite sure you're getting peak Trent Williams. What number does he wear, by the way? Because Chris Forster, the offensive line coach for the 49ers, the big thing was, how great is it to not have to prepare for Aaron Donald? And he was like, yeah, that's great. But 91 is sort of the heir apparent, and 97 is a really good rusher too.
So, wow. Okay. 97 is Hoyt. So that was interesting. 91 is Kobe Turner. Okay. But you got a V8 smoothie coming your way when it comes to where's number 8. That is Jared Verse. And he's leading every rookie in any sort of analytical realm. He's leading them by a mile. Just looks by far better than any of the rookie pass rushers, including Braden Fisk, who I'm still very high on the Rams. And I think he has a shot this week against Brendel because he's not going up against Ragnow. But
Brendel stinks.
He's does.
Awful. He stinks on ice. That dude couldn't play dead in a cowboy movie. He's terrible. We are counting down the weeks till John Feliciano can get off IR and replace him at center. He's been so bad this year.
Oh, God.
Like the Niners, the Niners running game, it's like a clock. I always say this analogy. When all the pieces fit together properly, it runs so smooth and it can't be stopped. But you get one little grain of sand in there. All it takes is one guy to screw up his block or misread it or something, and the whole thing collapses. And Jake Brendel's been the grain of sand like constantly through 2 weeks. It's infuriating. But if you're telling me that Verse is going up against him, good. I mean, we're in trouble.
Yeah, well, Verse is going up against Williams, but yeah, Braden Fisk would be going up against him. Fisk or Kobe Turner. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But there is a lot to like going into this game if you're just a fan of football. Like, I understand there's injuries, and I get that. But getting to see that these next men up, and you can look at it and brush it off like, oh, this is just a jag. He's not going to do anything. Well, these two teams have drafted really well, in my opinion, at the bottom of the drafts. And you've seen, guys like Whittington, who's a 6th round pick, and Cameron Kinchins is going to have an opportunity on the Rams. But, I really like Jordan Mason. And I don't think, and I'm going to say this, I said this before he had a chance to really be the guy coming into the year. I've been very high on him, very high. And I don't think that they're going to miss anything like that Jordan Mason can't do. I think Christian McCaffrey is clearly the better running back. But their system and the way Kyle Shanahan is able to call a game, Mason is just as dangerous. And I just don't think people realize that. They didn't realize it going into week 1. But if they haven't realized it by now, then I don't know if they will until after this game. So I'm definitely high on Mason, really high on Jennings, have a lot of fandom there for Jennings. I just love players that are underrated. They play a position that's predominantly the diva position or whatever, and you never hear from them. They just do their job. They go to work. They catch a big ball on 3rd down to move the chains. They're not on the sideline jawing at Josh Allen. Oops, sorry, Stephon Diggs. But, they're not doing any of that. They're being part of the solution, not the problem. And what he does in the run game as well as a blocker is what keeps him on the field. So Jennings, to me, is an X factor in this game for sure. Also, I did not forget, Brandon Ayuk left the game last year. So it wasn't like the Rams played them tough, but they didn't have Brandon Ayuk for like 3/4 of the game. He'll be ready to go in this one. So I'm looking forward to it. I am. And former 49er, Ahkello Witherspoon might be activated this week to get his debut of the year in there because they need him. Regardless if Kobe Durant plays or not with a toe, they need him because I've not been impressed with Trey White.
Let me just tell you, depends on which Ahkello Witherspoon you get, because I've seen that guy look like one of the best corners in the league, tall, rangy, lengthy guy, and I've seen him look like an absolute scrub. And I've seen it in a 49ers uniform. I don't know what you've seen with the Rams, but it's
been great with the Rams.
Okay. And he's certainly shown flashes of that for sure. Let me just tell anybody that doesn't know about Jordan Mason, he is the person that the 49ers fans have wanted to see for years get more carries and take the load off of Christian McCaffrey because he just is a sledgehammer. He goes 100 miles an hour right into your face every single carry. You can't help but love him. He just rips through people. I think he leads the league in broken tackles by a running back through 2 weeks.
That's great.
He just keeps coming at you. It's like Rocky. It's unbelievable. So we love him. Where I really think they miss McCaffrey is the red zone. They're fine between the 20s because, like you said, the scheme, Mason's a good player. They're fine there. In the red zone, he doesn't have the gravity that McCaffrey has. And McCaffrey opens up a lot of stuff for other people. And that's where they have missed him. And that's where this team has bogged down. In that game against the Vikings, first of all, George Kittle catches a pass at the 1 yard line, which 99 times out of 100, he finds a way to get in the end zone there. He doesn't get into the end zone this time. They end up having to go for it from like the 3 yard line. And they have Jennings wide open, and a guy for the Vikings just tips the ball, so they don't score. It was a weird game because if 2 or 3 plays went different, the Niners would have won. And if 2 or 3 plays different, the Vikings would have blown them out by 27 points.
That's what I saw. That is the exact game that I watched. That's how I felt.
It's a very weird situation. And just so you know, I picked the Rams even before the injuries to Kittle and Ward.
What?
I picked the Rams. The 49ers, when
win this game?
Yes. When they play the way they played, where they allow a block punt, where they don't convert on 4th down, where Brock Purdy has 2 hideous turnovers, one of which occurs when nobody even touches him. The ball just squirts out of his hand and they turn it over. When they play like that, they can lose to anybody. And there have been too many times with this defense where we've gone into a game saying, their team's got their backup offensive lineman at this spot. We're going to be able to get pressure on them all day. And it never happens. And I feel like I know the Rams got their tackles back because I watched your live earlier today. That's reassuring for you guys. And I just don't know that they're going to be able to get the pressure on Stafford that other people have gotten. And Stafford is still really damn good. So if he has time to throw, I don't care who he's throwing to. He's going to find guys.
I agree with that, actually. And I think a lot of people kind of just forgot about the Lions game because of how bad the Cardinals game was. To be fair, I totally get it. It's very easy to forget. After the Cardinals game, losing 41-10, I was like, are we in week 6 now? Is it the bye? Because that game took forever. It was just nonstop. But I think a lot of it was built up frustration from the Cardinals. And I'm not making any excuses. The Rams played like garbage. And I will never, ever, ever, when I watch that game, I will never give injuries the reason to be the reason why they lost. They lost that game because of bad football, regardless. But when it comes to that style of game, the Cardinals had lost 13 of the last 15 games to the Rams. They had not won in Arizona against the Rams since 2014. And I kind of felt like going into this week, the Cardinals weren't going to break that. But I thought the 49ers were going to break their woes in Minnesota. So I was a little surprised. Also, because even though that was a good win, I don't feel like the Vikings got the best 49er team. I don't. And I don't feel like the Vikings are legit yet. I really don't. I feel like that fluky 97-yard touchdown pass by Sam Darnold, great throw. But now go and do that again. You're not going to be able to. That happens not even once a year, Rob. Let's be honest here. There are not many teams in the league that'll have more than a 90-yard play this year. That I think maybe 10 total, maybe less. It's not a common play. So when you factor that in, those things happen. I think with the Rams 49ers game here, it could go either way. But one thing that was alarming was the missed tackles the Rams had. And you had just said Jordan Mason breaks more tackles than any running back in the league currently. That is the worst. That is absolutely the worst combination if you are the Rams. But I also think, to be fair, their tackling was really good against the Lions. That's why Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is a yards after the catch specialist, running after the catch, he only had 13 yards on 3 catches in the first game. They did a really nice job of scheming, him and kind of putting him in a corner, but also actually being able to make the tackle. I think a lot of these stats, while they can be helpful, they can also hurt what you already know. And what I know is the Rams defense is not as bad as what we saw against Arizona. That is not at all indicative to what they are. But it was a bad game, and the stats piled up. And Rob, there were a lot of missed tackles, and now they lead the league. So I look at this and I think, in theory, that doesn't look like a good fit going up against Jordan Mason, right? You would think. But I don't think they're going to be as bad as they looked against Arizona. And so I think that does give them a fighting chance. Again, I'm not changing my pick. I've stood by it. I understand the injuries happened. I guess we're trying to, see who could be the most objective here. I mean, it's like, you're like, oh, I like your team. No, I think your team's going to win. Like, but I don't know, Rob. I think this will be a fun game because I'm excited to watch these next men up go. And I think that there are multiple ways to lose on both sides. I think there are multiple ways to win on both sides.
Just for more on Jordan Mason, he's tied for the most 10-plus yard carries, 15-plus mile-per-hour rushes, first downs, and broken tackles through 2 weeks. He's also second in total rushing, but 75% of Jordan Mason's yards have come after contact. So that just tells you the kind of guy he is. For the Niners, I think you're talking about next man up. If Kittle doesn't play, forget the tight end. They don't. Eric Saubert is nothing.
They just don't use the tight end at all.
Yeah. What I think a lot of Niner fans are hoping is that they get to see Jacob Cowing, number 19. He's the punt returner. They drafted him in the 5th round. He's a small guy, but he's freaking fast as hell. He is grease lightning, and we've wanted to see him have a bigger role, kind of fill in that Debo role, because he's a guy that you could hand the ball to, like on jet sweeps and stuff like that. He hasn't seen the field basically at all as an offensive player yet this year, and Niner fans are clamoring for it. If, Debo doesn't play, we know he's not going to play. If Kittle doesn't play, McCaffrey's not out there, maybe Jacob Cowing gets on the field and he could be another one of those next men up that you talk about to help give the Niners some explosive plays. Because that's really, they've been able to generate explosive plays, but they haven't been able to capitalize on them. But that's what this offense is built on. It's not the kind of offense that wants to go 12 plays down the field. They want to go, 9, 10 plays at most, avoid third down if they can, and pick up these chunk yardage plays. So hopefully Jacob Cowing plays, and hopefully he gets a little more exposure out there. So if you see a guy out there, number 19, you're like, wait, it doesn't look like Debo. It's not. Debo's number 1 now. Jacob Cowing's got the new number.
Yeah, I watched a lot of Jacob Cowing tape, and I'll tell you, there was not a moment where I felt like, wow, he's always open. He's always open on tape. He was. So I was a big fan of his just from the separation he can create. And I feel like that translates to the NFL, as we've learned. I mean, they'll get you all hyped about these players like a Treylon Burks. And then you watch him on tape and you're like, the guy can't separate. How is that going to translate to the NFL? Or what's his face? The guy that, the Patriots drafted over DK Metcalf. There you go. That's what he ended up becoming. That's kind of my point, though, is that these guys who can separate, that is a translatable skill to the NFL. And Jacob Cowing can not only work as a receiver over the middle, around, just all over the field, can run routes, can separate. He's got the speed to threaten you as a gadget option. And that is scary. And especially it's scary when you're going up against a team that their entire objective is, to your point, we want to shove these chunk plays down your throat. And he is one of those guys that can do it. So if he doesn't play, I would be shocked. I would have to imagine he's going to have a decent role. I think you're probably looking at Jennings, Ayuk, and Cowing. I know there's some other guys there, Bell and Conley, but I think Kyle Juszczyk is going to have a decent role in this game as well. Kind of one of those Ram killers. He toes the line for me, Rob. He toes the line for me as like a Taysom Hill kind of like, he's like, it's a shtick type of thing. It's a, almost a gimmick. And also to Taysom Hill where you're like, oh, I actually see the value here. There is a point to having this player. And he's not just a gimmick. He adds something. I don't know if he goes into like that tight end role almost with Kittle, but I think they trust him more in the passing attack than Eric Saubert. I will say that. But I'm curious. So because I know this team pretty well. Yadam is a guy that I really wanted in the offseason. Big fan of his game.
You can have him.
I keep hearing that. I thought he played pretty well. I don't know.
Not last week. He got cooked.
No. Last week. Well, nobody looked good last week, if we're being honest. That was
Fred Warner did.
Well, Fred Warner always looks good, though.
Yeah.
So
he's been rough.
Diamador Lenore, really good player, has really turned it on.
Mm-hmm.
Isaac Yadam, you're basically like, all right, here you go. You can have him. Yep. Charvarius Ward, do you think he plays? And if he doesn't play, who plays in his place?
So it's good questions. Mooney Ward, Kyle Shanahan went on KMBR. He went on KMBR Thursday and said they practiced Wednesday. They were good. And after practice, they had a little soreness. And so because of that, they held him out of practice on Thursday. So he kind of seemed like maybe Ward might be okay. Which would be huge because I think Ward and Lenore, to me, like I want the 49ers to feature them more. Just let them play man coverage more because they're really good. And I feel like they don't do that enough, and it's contributed to some of the pass rushing issues. But if Ward doesn't play, then Lenore will go to the outside, and I think it would be Renardo Green, their second-round pick from this year. I think they would keep Yadam in the slot, I would imagine, and they would go Renardo Green on the outside. We've heard really good things about him. They tried to get him going in the slot early on, and it didn't really work, and they kind of quickly put him back outside. So I think that would be the next best option. He's another guy that like 49er fans have wanted to see a lot because we heard good things in the preseason, and then he's sort of been on the shelf, like because Kyle doesn't ever play rookies unless he absolutely has to, pretty much. So he could be another guy that becomes an X factor on Sunday.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I feel like Sean does that too. So that was weird this year. First off, them having a first round pick, I think we could all agree that was a little weird. But Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, no preseason, just throwing him right into the fire right away. Cameron Kinchins in week 3 is going to have to play a significant role with John Johnson out. So yeah, I mean, normally Sean McVay doesn't want to have to rely on rookies either, but I don't feel like they really had a choice based on how they decided to build this roster. No Aaron Donald. Well, Braden Fisk has to fill some sort of role there because I thought they did a great job of explaining it. Aaron Donald led them to drafting 2 guys. They felt like they couldn't replace him with one guy. They had to draft 2 guys to try to replace him, Verse and Fisk. And we'll see if that ever holds up. I don't think it can. Even if Verse is incredible, Aaron Donald, I think, is the greatest defensive player ever. But with that said, looking at this game, what's like one crazy thing for you? And I know I kind of like reversed on you, but you know, what's one crazy thing that you think could happen in this game that maybe no one would see coming? Like a big play, big performance? Because for me, I mentioned Whittington. I think Whittington could have a blow-up game. But what say you?
I almost think that Jordan Mason could go for like 180 yards.
I can see it.
I think one, like he runs literally like a guy who gets paid by the yard. He runs with that much like intensity. And the Niners had so many problems with turnovers and crap like that last week that Kyle's like, you know what? I don't want to turn the ball over. I don't want my quarterback, seeing ghosts and not being able to decipher coverage. I'm just going to hand the ball off a billion times and hopefully we could run it down their throat. And then, I'll live in second and short and third and short all day long. And we'll just get the hell out of here with a win. Because I do think that there's a little bit of that feeling because of how poorly they played on both sides of the ball against Minnesota. And just especially from a coaching perspective, they were outcoached completely by Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell. And I think Kyle wants to get back to, we always push the Rams around. My guys are going to be confident going into the Rams, and we're just going to give Jordan Mason the ball 30 times. And you know what? I don't care about Jordan Mason because I have Christian McCaffrey, and he's going to come back at some point. And if Jordan Mason, gets hurt, well, then whatever. But we're going to do this. He's going to get us through this week 3 game.
I really see that. Now that you mention it, makes sense, right? I mean, you start to feel like you're cursed when you have all these injuries early on in the year. You're not trying to put Brock Purdy in harm's way, So Maybe. And to your point, Jordan Mason is just like, yeah, we like him a lot, but Kyle Shanahan has to be thinking from a different perspective. Like, yeah, I'm the cook in the kitchen here. Like, I'm the one that, yeah. So to your point, I actually kind of like that angle there. And I mean, who knows? Maybe we see 35 carries out of Jordan Mason. I mean, I think they absolutely could have run the ball like 40 times if Debo was healthy. But no Debo made me wonder. But now that I like that angle, we have Christian McCaffrey. We need to win this game. Let's just run it 35 times with Jordan Mason. And there you go.
Honestly, and I think if I were the Rams, the way I would attack the 49ers is to run the ball. The 49ers did a really good job against Breece Hall in week 1 and stuffing the running game. But I think that maybe had more to do with Nathaniel Hackett calling plays than anything else the 49ers were doing. And Ty Warren kicked the Niners' ass last week in Minnesota. I could see the Rams just giving the ball to Kyren Williams. This game may be over in like an hour and 10 minutes because neither team's going to pass, and that clock's just going to keep running.
I don't know how I feel about that. I like to savor my football, but, then again, I don't know. When it comes to the Rams, I would prefer them just win in an hour, I guess. I wouldn't have an issue with that.
Oh man, it's crazy that the 49ers are 1-1 and people are acting like they're 0-2. Like there is not the players, but there's a level of panic among a lot of the fans because Super Bowl hangover and all that stuff. It doesn't feel like 1-1 right now.
I get that vibe actually, but in a way, these teams are very similar, dealing with injuries, albeit the Rams are dealing with more. They both feel like 0-2, except the Rams are actually 0-2, and it seems like the fans have already forgotten week 1. And like Rams fans after week 1, especially myself, we're looking at that like, that was a really good loss if there ever was one. I mean, that was a really good loss to have on your resume. You're banged up. You're beaten up. You go into the league. And let's be honest here. When you start the NFL season week 1, everyone should have their go-to starting 5 offensive linemen. The Rams being without Rob Havenstein was a big deal. The Rams being, without Alec Jackson because of suspension was a big deal. But you still have 3 guys. Well, guess what? Everyone pretty much got hurt. Even Kevin Dotson, who played the entire game, was seen leaving the stadium in a walking boot. So it was just horrible. It almost, reminds you of 2022 when their entire offensive line was injured against Josh Allen and the Bills. With that said, though, that was still a really impressive loss. And the 49er game was still a really impressive win. You can't just now be like, yeah, the Jets don't matter. No, you talked up the Jets. You know what I mean? Like these people talked up the Jets, and clearly the NFL thought the Jets would be a good opponent because they put them on prime time, Monday Night Football, first Monday Night Football of the game of the year. They put them on, and the 49ers kicked the crap out of them. The game wasn't close. So I guess really what I'm saying is I find it really interesting, kind of the parallels between these two teams right now, because on one hand, yeah, the Rams lost week 1, but that was considered almost a win for a lot of people. Feeling good, going to week 2. Oh, we kicked the crap out of Arizona Cardinals. This is going to be easy. And then Arizona just punched him in the mouth repeatedly. Now everyone's forgotten about week 1. And on the flip side of that, it went down the way it did in Minnesota, and now everyone's forgetting that the 49ers just kicked the crap out of the Jets team that some people think is going to the Super Bowl. Some people think is going to the playoffs. I don't know. I was a little bit higher on them, and then after that game, I was like, I don't know. But I think just that's kind of the exciting thing. And it also, we have to remember, because we're in the business of chaos and news and all that, and we have to remember this is how people are, the fanatics for a reason. I still cannot side with anybody giving up on an entire NFL season with the talent these two teams have in week 3. I can't do it. Even if the Rams lose this game or the 49ers lose it, I'm not giving up on either team. They have way too much talent. We're not talking about the Panthers here. And by the way, they're going to win this week because they benched Bryce Young. But we're not talking about the Panthers here. We're not talking about the Browns. Like the Browns look awful. The Jaguars look awful, right? We're not talking about those teams. We're talking about teams that have talent. They're banged up, hasn't gone their way. Rams played the 2 NFC title teams in the first 3 games of the season. I'm not throwing away. I'm not doing what Chase Daniel said. Yeah, let's trade Stafford away to the Dolphins. I mean, did you see that?
I did see that. I don't know why I need Chase Daniel's opinion in my life for any reason. Like Chase Daniel, you were nothing ever in the NFL. Like, and I know a lot of times those guys make the best analysts. I just feel like for some reason I've been seeing a lot of Chase Daniel stuff. I don't need to see as much lately. Last thing for you. Let's say the season doesn't, regardless of what happens this week, let's say the season doesn't go the way the Rams want it to go. Is a trade of Matthew Stafford at some point a possibility? And is it a possibility that Stafford retires after the season?
I'd say no and no. Just from what I've heard, this seems like more than just a year plan. I think Stafford's back next year. I think the one player, unfortunately, I hate saying this, the one player that could be gone, I don't think he gets traded at the deadline, but who knows? Cooper Kupp, because the injuries.
Wow.
Yes. They were interested in Mike Evans. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but they were interested in Mike Evans. I know the 49ers, I think, talked to him too, or they were interested. And then he ended up going back to the Bucs. But the Rams were interested in Mike Evans. They talked to guys like Rome Odunze at the Combine. They were interested in kind of a top flight receiver. And, the assumption was, okay, you put him with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, and now you have this loaded wide receiver room. See how much that's working out for Caleb Williams. But, with that, it's like Cooper Kupp, and I love the guy, and I still think he's going to be fine. But I understand now you start to get into the territory where he's getting up there in age. Mm-hmm. He is one of the heart and souls of this team, but he gets hurt every year. He only has 2 1,000-yard seasons because he's been banged up that much. Mm-hmm. And you talk about 2022 and coming off the Super Bowl year and everybody had a Super Bowl hangover, whatever. Well, he did not. He looked like Cooper Kupp, and then he got hurt. And then 2023, he's dealing with injuries going in the season, misses the 49er game, doesn't come back until week 4 against Arizona, I believe. And, of course, what do you know? Has a 100-yard game, just like no big deal. Did the same thing against the Eagles. Had 400-yard games last year. Didn't get to 800 yards, but he missed like 5 games. And he played almost the entire back half of last year injured. Like he was like 50% healthy. Now you fast forward to this year. Everything we're hearing, he is 100% himself. He is all the way back. He is Cooper Kupp. Then he gets this ankle injury against the Cardinals. Of course, the most freak injury ever. We've seen that tackle a million times, but of course, that ends up being that. Well, now, if Cooper Kupp, because now he has an ankle injury, which it doesn't appear it's a high ankle, which is good, but still a low ankle could mean another injury down the line. And if Cooper Kupp gets hurt again, it could mean his season. So I will say Stafford, I feel really good about as the quarterback next year. They don't really have a choice. They gave up a 2nd-round pick to move up and get Braden Fisk next year. So trading up for a quarterback is going to be a little tougher. But they also don't have a choice because they still have guys. A lot of these contracts, they were 3-year deals. Mm-hmm. Now, flexibility to move out of them in year 1, after year 1, after year 2, but they didn't sign anybody past that 3-year window. And a lot of people speculated, is this for the Puka Nacua deal? Is this for Steve Avila? Could be. But I also think that they have set a timeline where the next 3 years, this is our run with Stafford, for better or for worse. And I don't expect, and I know, Mike Lombardi had his say last year about how they tried to trade Stafford. They did not try to trade Stafford. That was incorrect information. I can tell you that wholeheartedly. They believe in Stafford. They love Stafford. I would say so much so, there are people that would question how much longer Sean McVay would coach after Stafford.
That's what I said to you.
They are not trying to trade him, even if it goes south. And there's a chance it does. I'm not sitting here and saying it's impossible. I didn't hate where Chase Daniel's head was at. I understood the rationale. It's when you start saying, yeah, they'll give up a 2nd-round pick in Matthew Stafford and send the 2nd-round pick, and then the Dolphins will send their 3rd-round pick, and the Panthers get that, and then the Rams get Bryce Young. I'm like, okay, well, Jake 2 years ago is probably really excited about Bryce Young. But right now, are you kidding me? I like Bryce Young. I hope he figures it out. I don't think he's going to do it. I think all of the dire exclamation points, red flags, everything is there with Bryce Young. You can say he didn't have weapons. He didn't have an offensive line. What's not talked about is the Carolina Panthers went out, got him weapons, got him an offensive line. If you can't get the ball to Adam Thielen, if you can't get the ball to your receivers, Deontay Johnson, whoever, that's on you. That's not on them. So when I saw that, I think that annoyed me because really, if we're being honest, you would have to get a Dak Prescott level player for them to move on from Matthew Stafford. You'd have to get, I think really it'd have to be like Kirk Cousins. It would have to be like Kirk Cousins level when he's fully healthy. You don't just trade Matthew Stafford for this guy, a reclamation project. I mean, We were talking about Zach Wilson reclamation projects, and that would be like a 6th round pick. And that is the point. There's actual value there. You give up something small to maybe get something big in return because you are banking on yourself having the better coaching staff, developmental staff, all of that. But let's be honest here, Rob. I don't even know if Sean McVay could figure out Bryce Young right now. He looks shell-shocked. He does not look like it's going to work out in the NFL. I am rooting for him. Truthfully, I'm not trying to kick him while he's down, but I don't know. I mean, would he be better off with the Rams than the Panthers? Without a doubt. Would he be better off throwing a Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and all? Absolutely. But there comes a point where it's almost just an insulting of your intelligence, and that's the point that we've reached. Yes, Chase, you had an idea. The idea is not wrong if everything fails, but he presented it as like this is something that needs to happen right now, which was the first issue. And the second was Bryce Young being like, who cares about, why am I making the Dolphins better? I don't care about the Dolphins. Right. I like Jalen Ramsey. I want him to do well, but I don't owe Jalen Ramsey the Dolphins Super Bowl. I don't.
And I just want to say the times in NFL history where you've got a high draft pick quarterback that goes somewhere and stinks and goes somewhere else and ends up being really good are almost zero. They're so small. Even Baker Mayfield, who played, he's been okay.
He's on his 4th team.
Right. And and that's a success story in that category. Yeah. No doubt but he's not an elite quarterback. No, it doesn't happen. If a guy is going to be that good, they're usually that good right away. And you can talk about Steve Young, because I heard that a lot with Sam Darnold, which was the most insane thing ever. If that's the example you have to go to, if you can't come up with a more recent example than that, the one time where it's really worked out, or Brett Favre, I guess you could say too, other than that, it usually doesn't work. So
yeah, first round pick, you want to say Geno Smith, fine.
He's not that good either.
Am I trading Matthew Stafford to get Geno Smith because he's a little bit younger? Am I trading Matthew Stafford for a shot of a potential first round pick? A shot.
Just take a draft pick at that point. I would rather have a draft pick than Bryce Young.
I wouldn't trade Matthew Stafford based on the precedent that has been set from Aaron Rodgers' deal. Okay. When the Jets trade for him. I'm not trading Stafford for anything less than 2 first round picks. Not doing it. I'm absolutely not trading Stafford for anything less than 2 first round picks. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't trade Stafford. I'd let him retire a Ram. He's earned it. He won a Super Bowl. Loyalty, I understand it's a business, but I mean, man, you start to look pretty bad when you got Kurt Warner won you your Super Bowl and you cast him off for Mark Bulger, and then you're just itching to get rid of Matthew Stafford now. I don't know. I don't like that. I don't think they like that. I don't think they would do that. Jared Goff wasn't going to win them a Super Bowl. That's the difference. Matthew Stafford won them a Super Bowl. He's got some leeway. Now, if they get into the realm of Brett Favre territory where they got this young quarterback and he won't leave, that's fine. But right now, Stafford is only 36 years old. People are trying to act like he's 46, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
To be fair, it's an old 36 though.
I know
he's so
it takes
tough.
A lot, Lions.
He's
you kidding me?
I have so much respect for how tough Matthew Stafford is. He's hurt. It's unbelievable.
He's hurt in every game, by the way. They're always like, "Oh, Stafford's hobbled." I'm like, "When is he not hobbled? When is that guy's ankle not detached?" Like, come on.
If he's not on the bench, it's just regular Matt Stafford. But anyway, thank you so much. We went way over our time. I really appreciate it. Jake Ellenbogen covers the Rams. If you want to check him out, just search Jake Ellenbogen, Ellenbogen on YouTube. I promise you it will make you a far, far more knowledgeable NFL fan. Thanks for the time, Jake. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. Always love chopping it up with you.